Lisa Carter sat at her desk in the quiet communication room of Frontier Watch Station. The stars outside the window looked peaceful, but Lisa knew space was never really quiet. Radio waves, energy signals, and messages traveled between worlds every second. Her job was to listen for anything important. The coffee in her cup had gone cold hours ago. She rubbed her tired eyes and looked at the screens showing wave patterns and frequency readings. Most of the signals were normal, ships talking to each other, weather reports from nearby planets, and the usual space traffic chatter. Then something different appeared on her screen. The signal was very weak, almost lost in the background noise of space. Lisa leaned forward and adjusted the controls to make it clearer. The pattern looked strange. It was not like the usual human or alien communications she heard every day. "Computer, run analysis on signal frequency 847.2, she said. The computer's voice responded, "Signal origin unknown. Distance approximately 50,000 light-years. Pattern suggests mathematical sequence embedded in transmission." Lisa's heart started beating faster. 50,000 light-years meant the signal came from outside their galaxy. The mathematical sequences were interesting too. When different species wanted to show they were intelligent, they often used math because numbers meant the same thing everywhere. She called her supervisor. "Captain Morrison, I think you should see this." Captain Jake Morrison walked into the communication room a few minutes later. He was a big man with gray hair who had been working in space for 30 years. He looked at Lisa's screens with tired eyes. "What do you have, Carter?" he asked. "A signal from outside our galaxy, sir. It has mathematical patterns that look like a distress call." Morrison looked at the readings and shook his head. "Probably just interference from a pulsar or some other natural phenomenon. Space is full of weird signals that look meaningful but aren't. But sir, the patterns are too regular. And listen to this part." Lisa played a section of the transmission that had been cleaned up by the computer. The sound was haunting. Even through the static and electronic noise, they could hear something that sounded like voices. The tone was desperate, frightened. Morrison frowned. "Get Dr. Foster down here. If anyone can figure out what this is, she can." Dr. Amy Foster arrived 20 minutes later. She was the station's chief science officer and knew more about alien languages than anyone else on Frontier Watch. She had short brown hair and wore thick glasses that made her eyes look bigger. "Show me what you found," she said to Lisa. Lisa played the signal again and showed her the mathematical patterns. Dr. Foster studied the data for a long time without speaking. She ran the signal through different translation programs and compared it to known alien languages. "This is incredible," she finally said. "The mathematical sequences are definitely intentional. They're using prime numbers and geometric progressions, classic signs of intelligence trying to communicate." "Can you translate it?" Morrison asked. "Give me some time. The language structure is completely unknown, but the mathematical foundation should help me build a translation matrix." For the next 6 hours, Dr. Foster worked on the signal. Lisa stayed to help, adjusting the reception equipment to get cleaner. Recordings. Morrison went back to his other duties but asked to be called when they learned anything. Finally, Dr. Foster sat back in her chair with a shocked expression on her face. "I've got a partial translation," she said. "Lisa, you were right, this is definitely a distress call." The translated message appeared on the screen. "Help us. Dying. The dark ones come. Please. Anyone who can hear. Our world burns. Children crying. No hope left. Please help us." Lisa felt cold. "Who are they?" "The signal signature suggests they call themselves the HFY. I've never heard of this species before. They're not in any of our databases." Morrison returned when they called him. He read the translated message and was quiet for a long time. "Where exactly is this signal coming from?" he asked. Dr. Foster brought up a star map. "The Andromeda sector. It's completely outside our galaxy, 50,000 light-years away. At our fastest ships, it would take over 1,000 years to get there." "Then there's nothing we can do," Morrison said. "We need to report this to the Galactic Council and let them decide what to do." Lisa looked at the message again. The desperation in those words made her chest feel tight. "Captain, shouldn't we try to help them?" "With what, Carter? We can't travel 50,000 light years. Even if we could, we don't know what we'd be fighting or how many enemies there are. The best we can do is pass this along to people who might be able to make sense of it." The report was sent to Earth and the other major planets in the Galactic Council. Lisa expected quick action, maybe emergency meetings and rescue plans. Instead, she got disappointment. The response came back. 3 days later, message acknowledged. Situation noted. No action recommended due to extreme distance and unknown threat level. Continue monitoring. "That's it?" Lisa asked Dr. Foster. "They're just going to ignore it?" "The council has to think practically," Dr. Foster replied. But she didn't sound happy about it. "Resources are limited. We can't save everyone, especially people we can't even reach." But Lisa couldn't stop thinking about the message. She kept monitoring the frequency, hoping for more transmissions. Over the next few weeks, more signals came through. Each one was weaker than the last. The translations got worse, too. "Fewer of us now. The dark ships take our people. Crystal's going dark. Please remember us." Then came a transmission that broke Lisa's heart. It was clearer than the others, as if someone had gotten closer to a more powerful transmitter. The voice sounded young. "Please, someone, anyone, help us. My family is gone. The Dark Ones took them. I'm hiding, but they'll find me soon. Is anyone out there? Please say you can hear me." Lisa stared at the translation on her screen. Somewhere 50,000 light years away, a child was alone and scared, calling out to the stars for help that would never come. She made a decision that night. Even if the Galactic Council wouldn't act, maybe she could find someone who would. Lisa began recording every transmission, building a complete picture of what was happening to the HFY. She didn't know it yet, but her decision to keep listening would change everything. Admiral Daniel Brooks sat in his office on Luna Station, reading Lisa Carter's report for the 3rd time. The young communications officer had sent him detailed records of every transmission from the HFY over the past 2 months. Each message was more desperate than the last. The door to his office opened and Captain Ryan Hayes walked in. Ryan was one of the fleet's best commanders, a man who had never backed down from a fight. His dark hair showed some gray now, but his eyes were still sharp and determined. "You wanted to see me, Admiral?" Ryan asked. "Sit down, Captain. I need your opinion on something." Brooks handed him the report. "Read this and tell me what you think." Ryan read through the translations quietly. His face grew more serious with each page. When he finished, he looked up at the Admiral. "These people need help," Ryan said simply. "The Galactic Council says it's impossible. 50,000 light years is too far. We don't have ships that can make that journey." "What about the new quantum tunnel drives? Dr. Sullivan's team has been testing them for 2 years. Admiral Brooks leaned back in his chair. "The quantum drives are still experimental. They've only been tested on short jumps within our solar system. A journey to another galaxy could destroy any ship that tries it. But it's possible." "Technically, yes. Dr. Sullivan thinks the drives could work over galactic distances. But she also says there's only a 60% chance the ships would survive the journey." Ryan was quiet for a moment. "What does your gut tell you, Admiral?" Brooks stood up and walked to the window. Earth was visible in the distance, blue and beautiful. "My gut tells me that if we don't help these people, we'll have to live with that choice for the rest of our lives. But my brain tells me I can't ask thousands of people to go on a suicide mission." "What if you didn't have to ask? What if people volunteered?" The next day, Admiral Brooks called a meeting of his senior officers. Captain Ryan Hayes was there, along with Dr. Kate Sullivan from the Quantum Physics Division, Commander Alex Turner from the Assault Fleet, and several others. Dr. Sullivan was a thin woman with red hair who always seemed to be thinking about complex equations. She had designed the quantum tunnel drives that might make the impossible journey possible. "I've run the calculations dozens of times," she told the group. The quantum drives can theoretically create a tunnel through space-time that would let us cross to the Andromeda Galaxy in about 3 weeks. But I have to be honest, we've never tested this technology at such distances. Commander Alex Turner leaned forward. What are the risks? The tunnel could collapse while we're inside it. The ships could be torn apart by gravitational forces. We could end up lost in empty space between galaxies. Or we could arrive and find ourselves facing an enemy we can't defeat. But people are dying while we have this conversation, Ryan said. Every day we wait, more of them are killed. Admiral Brooks looked around the table. I need to know if anyone here would be willing to volunteer for this mission. Remember, it's likely a one-way trip. Even if we survive the journey there, we might not be able to get back. Every person at the table raised their hand. Word of the mission spread quietly through the fleet. Admiral Brooks didn't make any official announcements, but within a week, volunteer requests started coming in. Pilots, engineers, Marines, medical, staff and scientists all asked to join the mission. Captain Ryan Hayes was chosen to lead the mission. His ship, Terra's Wrath, would be the flagship. Commander Alex Turner would command the assault carrier Freedom's Edge. Dr. Kate Sullivan insisted on coming along in her science vessel Breakthrough to monitor the quantum drives. In total, 12 ships volunteered for the mission. 15,000 people agreed to risk everything to help strangers they had never met. The Galactic Council was not happy when they learned about the mission. Representative Nora Kim from Earth's Diplomatic Corps called Admiral Brooks to her office. She was angry and didn't try to hide it. This is madness, Admiral. You're talking about violating every rule of interstellar engagement. We have no authority to interfere in conflicts outside our galaxy. We're not representing Earth or the Galactic Council, Brooks replied. These are volunteers acting on their own. Don't play word games with me. You know the other species in the Council are already calling humans reckless and emotional. This will prove their point. Admiral Brooks had heard this criticism before. The Zephyrians thought humans were too quick to fight. The Altarians believed humans made decisions with their hearts instead of their minds. The Nexus Collective considered humans to be an unpredictable new species that needed to be controlled. Maybe they're right, Brooks said. Maybe we are too emotional. But sometimes emotion is what makes you do the right thing when logic tells you to walk away. Representative Kim shook her head. If this mission fails, it will be a disaster for human relations with other species. If it succeeds, they'll expect us to be the galaxy's police force, rushing off to save everyone. I can live with that. There are ships prepared for departure in secret. They loaded supplies, weapons, and the experimental quantum drive technology. Lisa Carter, the communications officer who had first heard the HFY distress call, requested permission to join the mission. Admiral Brooks turned her down. Her job was too important at Frontier Watch, but Lisa continued monitoring the alien transmissions. 3 days before the mission launched, she received a message that made her cry. The translation was short. To whoever is listening, thank you for hearing our voices. We know no help is coming. The distance is too great, and we are too few. But knowing that someone somewhere heard our call makes the darkness less frightening. We will remember your kindness as we face our end. Lisa immediately sent the message to Captain Ryan Hayes. That night, Ryan gathered his crew on Terra's Wrath. He read them the message from the HFY. They think no one is coming, he told his people. They've given up hope. But they're wrong. We heard them and we're coming. It might take us 3 weeks to get there, it might be too late, but we're going to try. The quantum tunnel drives were activated at order 800 hours on a Tuesday morning. 12 human ships disappeared from normal space, racing through a tunnel of twisted spacetime toward a galaxy 50,000 light-years away. As they vanished, Lisa Carter sent one final transmission toward the Andromeda Galaxy. Hold on. Help is coming. She didn't know if anyone would receive the message. The distance was so great that her signal might not arrive for decades. But she sent it anyway because sometimes hope was the only thing you could give someone. The human fleet was alone now, traveling through the darkness between galaxies. Behind them was everything they had ever known. Ahead of them was the unknown, and people who needed their help. The quantum tunnel was like nothing any human had ever experienced. Captain Ryan Hayes stood on the bridge of Terra's Wrath, watching the strange lights flow past the ship's windows. Space outside looked twisted, with colors that didn't have names and shapes that hurt to look at. "Drive status report," he called to his engineering officer. "Quantum tunnel is stable, Captain. We're making good time. Dr. Sullivan estimates we'll reach the Andromeda Galaxy in 18 days. Ryan nodded, but felt worried. The tunnel drives were working perfectly, almost too perfectly. Dr. Kate Sullivan had expected more problems during such a long journey through folded space-time. On the science vessel Breakthrough, Dr. Sullivan was having the same thoughts. She studied the readings from all 12 ships and frowned at what she saw. "The quantum fields are more stable than my calculations predicted," she told her assistant, Dr. Mike Davis. "It's like something is helping to keep the tunnel open." "Could it be natural phenomenon?" Mike asked. "Maybe. Or maybe someone else is using technology similar to ours. I'm picking up energy signatures that don't match our drives." Meanwhile, on the assault carrier Freedom's Edge, Commander Alex Turner was preparing his troops for whatever they might find. He had 3,000 Marines under his command, all volunteers who knew they might be facing an enemy unlike anything they had fought before. "What do we know about these Vorthak?" asked Sergeant Tony Clark, one of Alex's most trusted soldiers. "Not much," Alex replied. "From the HFY transmissions, they sound like a military empire that conquers other species. They have advanced technology and seem to travel between galaxies. How many are we talking about? Unknown. Could be thousands, could be millions. We won't know until we get there." The journey through the quantum tunnel continued for 17 days. Then, on the 18th day, alarms started ringing on every ship. "Captain Hayes, we're approaching the exit point," reported the navigation officer. "Quantum tunnel will collapse in 30 minutes. Ryan activated the communication system to speak with the entire fleet. "All ships, prepare for normal space. Transition. We don't know what we'll find on the other side. Weapons ready, shields up." The 12 human ships emerged from the quantum tunnel near the edge of the Andromeda Galaxy. What they saw made everyone fall silent. The galaxy was dying. Where there should have been bright stars and colorful nebulas, they saw darkness. Entire star systems had been stripped of light. Huge black shapes moved between the stars like hungry shadows. "Dear God," whispered Dr. Sullivan as she looked at her sensor readings. "The energy signatures from this galaxy are almost zero. Something is consuming everything." Captain Ryan Hayes ordered long-range scans of nearby systems. What the sensors showed was worse than anyone had imagined. The Vorthak ships were not made of metal and circuits like human vessels. They were grown like living creatures. The smallest ones were the size of cities. The largest ones were bigger than planets. They moved through space like whales swimming through an ocean, slowly and purposefully. "Captain, I'm detecting life signs on the third planet of the Keith system," reported Science Officer Sarah Johnson. "It's weak, but there are definitely survivors." "That has to be the HFY homeworld," Ryan said. "Set course for the planet. All ships maintain stealth mode as much as possible." As they traveled deeper into the Andromeda Galaxy, the human fleet saw the true scope of the Vorthak conquest. Entire solar systems had been consumed. The organic ships had eaten planets, moons, and asteroids, using the matter to grow bigger and create more ships. "I'm reading thousands of Vorthak vessels," reported Commander Turner from Freedom's Edge. "Maybe tens of thousands. They're everywhere." Dr. Sullivan made a discovery that chilled everyone who heard it. The Vorthak ships aren't just consuming matter for fuel. They're absorbing the populations of conquered worlds. I'm detecting millions of life signs inside those vessels. "You mean prisoners?" asked Captain Hayes. "Not exactly. The life signs are connected to the ship's systems. It's like the Vorthak are using other species as living components of their technology." The fleet reached the HFY homeworld after 3 days of careful travel. The planet looked terrible. Its surface was covered with massive mining operations run by Vorthak machines. The beautiful crystal cities that the HFY had described in their transmissions were broken and dark. "I'm getting a transmission from the surface," reported Communications Officer Lisa Martinez. "It's very weak." The message was in the HFY language that Dr. Foster had taught them to understand. Unknown ships, please identify yourselves. Are you more hunters come to take the last of us? Captain Hayes responded personally. This is Captain Ryan Hayes, of the human vessel Terra's Wrath. We received your distress calls. We've come to help. The silence lasted for almost 10 minutes. Then a new voice came through the communication system, speaking in broken but understandable human language. Humans? You came from the distant galaxy? How is this possible? We found a way to travel fast. We heard your people calling for help. You came all this way for strangers? We do not understand. The Vorthak have conquered 12 galaxies. They have never been defeated. Why would you risk your lives for us? Ryan thought about the question. Why had they come? The logical answer was that it was the right thing to do. But there was more to it than that. Because when someone calls for help, you answer. That's what makes us human. The HFY voice was quiet again. Then it said, My name is Crystal Song of Hope. I am one of the last free HFY. We number only a few thousand now. The Vorthak have taken everyone else. Can you tell us about the Vorthak? How do we fight them? You cannot. Fight them with weapons. They absorb energy attacks and use them to grow stronger. Physical weapons cannot penetrate their living armor. They are a collective mind. All Vorthak think as one. They cannot be reasoned with or negotiated with. Commander Turner joined the conversation. Then how do we stop them? No one has ever stopped them. They consume everything and move on to the next galaxy. We learned from captured Vorthak data that your galaxy, the Milky Way, is their next target. The implications hit everyone at once. The human fleet hadn't just come to rescue the HFY. They had stumbled into a threat that would eventually destroy their own home. How long before they finish with this galaxy? Dr. Sullivan asked. Months, perhaps less. They grow stronger with each world they consume. Captain Hayes made a decision that would change everything. Then we stop them here, before they can reach our home. Crystal Song of Hope's voice was sad. Brave humans, your hearts are noble, but you are 12 ships against millions. You will die bravely, but you will still die. Maybe, Ryan said, but we didn't come this far to give up without a fight. As the human fleet prepared for an impossible battle, Dr. Sullivan made one more disturbing discovery. The Vorthak weren't just consuming the Andromeda galaxy. They were transforming it into something else, something dark and hungry that could spread to other galaxies. The humans had come to answer a distress call. Now they realized they were fighting for the survival of all life in the universe. Dr. Kate Sullivan stared at the data on her screens, trying to understand what she was seeing. The Vorthak ships were not just alive. They were connected to each other in ways that defied human understanding of biology and technology. Every Vorthak vessel shares the same consciousness, she explained to the other commanders during their emergency meeting. They think as one giant mind across millions of ships. That's their greatest strength. Captain Ryan Hayes leaned forward. And their greatest weakness? Maybe. If we could disrupt their connection, even temporarily, it might cause chaos in their ranks. Commander Alex Turner looked skeptical. How do we disrupt a psychic connection between millions of creatures? Dr. Sullivan pulled up her research. Notes. I've been studying the captured data from the HFY. The Vorthak connection isn't psychic, it's technological. They use quantum entanglement to share thoughts across vast distances. If we could introduce interference into that network, we could give them individual thoughts, finished engineer Tony Clark. Make them think for themselves instead of as part of the collective. Exactly, but we'd need to get close to their ships to plant the interference devices. Captain Hayes stood up and walked to the star map showing Vorthak positions. Their ships are organic. That means they might be vulnerable to biological attacks as well as technological ones. What are you thinking, Captain? Asked Dr. Sullivan. We've been approaching this like a military problem. But what if it's really a medical problem? What if we could create a virus, not a biological virus, but an idea virus that spreads through their network? Dr. Sullivan's eyes widened. A concept that contradicts their collective thinking. Something that forces individual choice. Freedom, said Commander Turner quietly. The idea of personal freedom. Over the next few days, the human fleet worked frantically to develop their plan. Dr. Sullivan and her team created devices they called liberation pods, small quantum transmitters that could broadcast human concepts directly into the Vorthak communication network. The concepts they chose were simple but powerful: the right to choose your own path, the value of individual thought, the beauty of personal dreams and hopes. Engineer Tony Clark led the team that modified captured Vorthak biomaterial to hide the liberation pods. The devices would look like normal Vorthak technology until they activated. Meanwhile, Captain Hayes and Commander Turner planned surgical strikes against key Vorthak positions. They couldn't fight the entire fleet, but they could target command, ships, and communication centers. The first test came when a small group of Vorthak scouts approached the HFY homeworld. The human ship stayed hidden while Dr. Sullivan activated one liberation pod that had been placed on an asteroid near the Vorthak patrol. The effect was immediate and shocking. One of the Vorthak ships suddenly stopped moving. It drifted away from the group, no longer following the collective's commands. The other ships seemed confused, circling around their lost companion like dogs trying to understand why their pack member was acting strange. "It worked," whispered Dr. Sullivan. The ship broke free from the collective consciousness, but the victory was short-lived. Within minutes, larger Vorthak vessels arrived and destroyed the confused ship. The collective had recognized the threat and eliminated it. "They kill their own people rather than let them think freely," observed Commander Turner. "This isn't just about conquest. It's about control." Captain Hayes realized they needed a bigger test. "We need to hit multiple targets at once. If we can free enough Vorthak ships simultaneously, they won't be able to destroy them all." The plan was dangerous and required splitting the human fleet. Captain Hayes would lead Terra's Wrath and 4 other ships in a direct assault on a Vorthak command center. Commander Turner would take Freedom's Edge and 3 ships to attack a different target. Dr. Sullivan would use the remaining ships to plant liberation pods throughout the local Vorthak network. The attack began at dawn on the HFY homeworld. Human ships emerged from hiding behind the planet's moons, moving fast toward their targets. Captain Hayes led his group straight into the heart of a Vorthak fleet formation. The alien ships were slow to respond. They had never encountered enemies who attacked with such speed and determination. "Liberation pods deployed," reported Dr. Sullivan from Breakthrough. "Activating quantum interference now." The results were spectacular and terrifying. Across thousands of Vorthak ships, individual consciousness suddenly blazed to life. Creatures who had never thought for themselves were suddenly faced with questions they had never considered. Who am I? What do I want? Why am I doing this? The Vorthak fleet fell into chaos. Ships that had moved in perfect formation suddenly scattered in different directions. Some stopped fighting entirely. Others turned on their former companions. But the collective fought back hard. Vorthak command ships began destroying any vessel that showed signs of individual thought. The space around the HFY homeworld became a battlefield, as the alien empire literally tore itself apart. Commander Turner's assault team found themselves in the middle of a Vorthak civil war. "Captain Hayes, we've got Vorthak ships fighting each other all around us. Some of them are trying to help us." One of the freed Vorthak vessels sent a message in broken galactic common. I choose to not consume. I choose to help. What is my name?" "I need a name," Dr. Sullivan responded. "Immediately. You can choose any name you want, that's what freedom means." "I choose individual. I am individual, not part of the eating darkness anymore." Individual became the first Vorthak to join the human fleet. Others followed as more liberation pods activated throughout the galaxy. But the cost was terrible. For every Vorthak ship that chose freedom, 3 others were destroyed by the collective for the crime of thinking independently. The battle raged for days. Commander Alex Turner's ship was badly damaged while protecting a group of newly freed Vorthak. He made a decision that would be remembered forever. "All ships, this is Turner. My engines are failing and we're surrounded. I'm going to ram the Vorthak command ship. Maybe that will give you time to escape." "Alex, no," shouted Captain Hayes. We can find another way. Take care of my people, Ryan. Tell them we came here for something important. Freedom's Edge accelerated toward the massive Vorthak command vessel, its weapons firing constantly. The collision destroyed both ships in a blast of light that could be seen from the planet's surface. But Turner's sacrifice worked. The destruction of the command ship caused confusion throughout the local Vorthak fleet. More ships broke free from the collective as their control network faltered. By the end of the week, the humans had achieved something impossible. They hadn't defeated the Vorthak Empire, but they had proven it could be defeated. The idea of individual freedom was spreading through the collective like a virus, turning the Empire's greatest strength into its greatest weakness. Crystal Song of Hope contacted the human fleet with news that gave everyone hope. The Vorthak are retreating from our world. Many of their ships have stopped consuming and started asking questions instead. You have given us something more valuable than rescue. You have given us the tools to free ourselves. Captain Hayes looked at his battered fleet. They had lost good people, including Commander Turner, but they had also learned how to fight an enemy that had conquered 12 galaxies. This is just the beginning, he told his crew. We've shown that the Vorthak can be stopped. Now we need to spread that knowledge to every galaxy they've conquered. The liberation of Andromeda had begun. News of the human victory in Andromeda traveled faster than anyone expected. The freed Vorthak ships had their own quantum communication network, and the concept of rebellion spread through it like wildfire to other conquered galaxies. Captain Ryan Hayes stood on the bridge of Terra's Wrath, reading reports from across the universe. Uprisings were starting everywhere the Vorthak had established control. The message was always the same. Freedom was possible, and humans had shown the way. Captain, we're receiving a priority transmission from Earth, reported communications. Officer Lisa Martinez. Admiral Daniel Brooks appeared on the main screen. His face looked tired but amazed. Ryan, what the hell have you people done out there? We answered a distress call, sir, just like we planned. You've started a galactic revolution. The Zephyrians are demanding to know how you defeated an enemy they considered unstoppable. The Altarians want to study your psychological warfare techniques. Half the Galactic Council is calling you heroes, and the other half thinks you're dangerous. Captain Hayes smiled. What do you think, Admiral? I think you've changed everything, and I think you need to come home and explain how you did it. But Dr. Kate Sullivan had other ideas. She had been studying the quantum communication network that connected the freed Vorthak ships, and she had made an incredible discovery. Captain, we can't go home yet, she said during the senior staff meeting. The liberation technology we developed isn't just working in Andromeda, it's spreading to every galaxy the Vorthak have conquered, but it needs guidance. What kind of guidance? Asked Captain Hayes. The newly freed Vorthak don't know how to be individuals. They've never made personal choices or thought independent thoughts. Without help, many of them will either die from confusion or be recaptured by the collective. Engineer Tony Clark nodded. It's like teaching someone to walk after they've been paralyzed their whole life. Dr. Sullivan brought up a galaxy map showing Vorthak positions. I've identified 12 major Vorthak strongholds in different galaxies. If we can establish liberation centers at each location, we can teach the freed Vorthak how to live as individuals, instead of as parts of a collective mind. Captain Hayes studied the map. The distances were enormous. Some galaxies were millions of light years apart. We only have 9 ships left, Kate. How can we cover 12 galaxies? We don't have to do it alone anymore. Look at this. Dr. Sullivan showed them communication logs from the past week. Species from all over the universe were sending messages to the human fleet. Some wanted to thank them. Others wanted to help. Many wanted to learn the liberation techniques. The HFY had been the most helpful. Crystal Song of Hope had worked with her people to modify their crystal technology, creating devices that could amplify the liberation signals across vast distances. The HFY are offering to become our partners in the liberation effort, Dr. Sullivan explained. Their crystal technology can boost our quantum signals, and their people understand what it's like to face the Vorthak. But the biggest surprise came from an unexpected source. Individual, the first freed Vorthak, had been busy. Human friends, individual said during a communication session. I have been speaking with other freed Vorthak across many galaxies. We wish to help in the liberation of our former collective. We know their weaknesses better than anyone. How many freed Vorthak are we talking about? Asked Captain Hayes. Thousands now, growing every day. We are learning to choose our own names, our own purposes. It is wonderful and frightening. But we want others to experience this gift of individual thought. Individual had become the leader of what the freed Vorthak called the independence movement. They were using their knowledge of Vorthak technology and tactics to help liberate more of their former collective. Meanwhile, back in the Milky Way galaxy, the Galactic Council was in chaos. Representative Nora Kim called an emergency session to discuss the human actions. The meeting room was filled with representatives from dozens of species, all talking at once. The humans have violated every principle of non-interference, complained the Zephyrian representative. They've started a war that could consume the entire universe. They've also shown us how to defeat an enemy we thought was unstoppable, countered the Altarian delegate. Perhaps we should be thanking them instead of criticizing them. The Nexus Collective representative was more practical. The question is not whether the humans were right or wrong. The question is what we do now. The Vorthak will eventually regroup and continue their expansion. We need to decide if we're going to help the liberation effort or sit back and wait for them to reach our galaxy. Admiral Brooks stood up to address the council. The volunteer fleet is requesting permission to continue their mission. They want to establish liberation centers in the 12 major Vorthak stronghold galaxies. With what authority? Demanded the Zephyrian. They're already operating outside our jurisdiction. With the authority that comes from being the only people who know how to fight this enemy, Brooks replied. Captain Hayes and his people have developed techniques that can free entire galaxies from Vorthak control. Are we really going to tell them to stop because of paperwork? The debate continued for hours, but eventually, the council reached a decision. They would officially support the liberation effort, but with conditions. The humans would share their liberation technology with other species. The mission would become a joint effort with representatives from all major galactic powers. Most importantly, Dr. Kate Sullivan would return to Earth to establish a training center where other species could learn the liberation techniques. Dr. Sullivan wasn't happy about leaving the mission, but she understood the importance of sharing their knowledge. If we're going to free the universe from Vorthak control, we need more than just humans working on it. Before she left for Earth, Dr. Sullivan worked with the HFY to create a new type of liberation device. These freedom crystals could be mass-produced and deployed by any species that wanted to help liberate Vorthak-controlled territory. The crystals worked by broadcasting concepts of individual choice and personal freedom directly into the Vorthak quantum network. But more than that, they taught newly freed Vorthak how to make decisions, how to form personal relationships, and how to find purpose as individuals. Captain Hayes divided his remaining fleet to cover as many Vorthak strongholds as possible. Each ship would carry freedom crystals and work with local liberation movements to free more of the collective. As the human ships prepared to separate and travel to different galaxies, Captain Hayes sent a message to Admiral Brooks on Earth. We came here to answer a distress call from one dying species. Instead, we found a threat to all life in the universe. But we also found something else, the power to give freedom to anyone who wants it. This mission isn't about humans being heroes anymore. It's about every thinking being having the right to choose their own path. The Liberation Fleet split up, with each ship heading toward a different galaxy. Behind them, they left a growing network of free Vorthak, liberated HFY, and new allies from dozens of species. The ripple effect that started with one human communications officer listening to a distant cry for help had become a wave of freedom spreading across the universe. And it was just beginning. 10 years had passed since the first human ships disappeared through a quantum tunnel to answer a desperate cry for help. The galaxy had changed in ways no one could have imagined. Admiral Ryan Hayes, promoted after Captain Morrison's retirement, stood in his new office on Liberation Station, a massive space station built jointly by humans, HFY, and freed Vorthak. Through his window, he could see ships from dozens of different species arriving and departing on liberation missions. His old ship, Terra's Wrath, was docked nearby, but it looked very different now. The hull had been modified with HFY crystal technology and Vorthak bioorganic improvements. It was faster, stronger, and more capable than any ship humanity had ever built. "Admiral, the morning briefing is ready," announced his aide, Lieutenant Sarah Johnson, who had been promoted from her previous communications role. The briefing room was filled with representatives from the Galactic Liberation Fleet. Individual, the first freed Vorthak, was there alongside Crystal Song of Hope from the HFY. There were also officers from the Zephyrian Navy, Altarian Science Corps, and even some former Nexus Collective ships. "What's our status across the targeted galaxies?" Hayes asked. Individual stood up to give his report. Over the years, he had learned to speak perfectly in dozens of languages, and his understanding of individual emotion had grown remarkably. "Liberation is proceeding ahead of schedule in 8 of the 12 target galaxies," Individual said. "The Andromeda Galaxy is now completely free of collective control. The Whirlpool Galaxy achieved liberation last month. The Sombrero Galaxy is expected to be free within the next 6 months." Crystal Song of Hope added her own report. "The Freedom Crystals continue to work beyond our original expectations. We've now produced over 10 million units, and they're being deployed by liberation teams across the universe." But the most amazing news came from Dr. Kate Sullivan, who joined the meeting via quantum communication from Earth. She had established the Freedom Institute, where beings from hundreds of species learned liberation techniques. "We've trained over 50,000 liberation specialists in the past 5 years," Dr. Sullivan reported. "But more importantly, we've developed new techniques that don't just free Vorthak from collective control. They can help any oppressed people gain independence from authoritarian systems." Admiral Hayes smiled. "The human doctrine has become bigger than just fighting the Vorthak." The human doctrine had become famous throughout the galaxy. It was simple. Every thinking being has the right to make their own choices, form their own opinions, and choose their own path in life. No government, collective, or authority had the right to control individual minds. The doctrine had inspired liberation movements on hundreds of worlds. Species that had lived under oppressive governments for centuries were demanding freedom. The galaxy was experiencing the largest wave of democratization in recorded history, but not everyone was happy with the changes. "Admiral, we're receiving a formal complaint from the Hegemony Coalition," reported Lieutenant Johnson. "They're accusing us of destabilizing their region by spreading dangerous ideas of individual liberty." Hayes wasn't surprised. The Hegemony Coalition was a group of authoritarian governments that ruled their people through fear and control. They saw the liberation movement as a direct threat to their power. "What's our response?" asked Individual, who had become very good at understanding political situations. "The same as always," Hayes replied. "We don't force freedom on anyone, but if people want to be free, we'll help them achieve it." The Liberation Fleet had developed strict rules about intervention. They never attacked governments or forced changes on unwilling populations, but they did provide support to any group that wanted to establish democratic freedoms. This approach had led to some amazing success stories. The Rigel system had overthrown a military dictatorship with the help of liberation specialists. The Tosm Vega colonies had established the first multi-species democracy in their region. Even some former Vorthak worlds had created new forms of government based on individual choice. The freed Vorthak had been particularly creative in forming new societies. Without the collective consciousness, they had discovered that they were actually many different species that had been forced together. Some preferred to live in small family groups. Others formed artistic communities. A few even chose to live alone, something that had been impossible under collective control. Individual, how are the former collective worlds adapting? Hayes asked. Better than we hoped. The suicide rates have dropped to nearly zero as more Vorthak learn to find purpose in individual existence. We've established support networks in every liberated system, and the newly free Vorthak are helping each other adapt. Individual paused, then continued with something that might have been pride in his voice. Many young Vorthak are choosing to join liberation teams to help free others. They say they want to give the gift of choice to those who still suffer under collective control. Crystal Song of Hope had her own good news. The HFY population has recovered to over 2 million. Our crystal cities have been rebuilt, but now they include spaces for other species who want to live with us. The Andromeda Galaxy has become a symbol of successful cooperation between different forms of life. The meeting was interrupted by an urgent communication from the outer monitoring stations. Admiral Hayes, we're receiving a distress call from the Sculptor Galaxy. It's similar to the original HFY transmission, but this time it's from a species called the Melody. They're being attacked by something they call the Silent Devourers. Hayes looked around the room at his diverse team of liberation specialists. 10 years ago, he had been a ship captain following orders. Now he was the leader of a galactic movement dedicated to freedom and individual choice. Analysis team. I want everything we can learn about this new threat. Individual, can you work with the Freed Vorthak network to see if anyone has encountered these silent devourers before? Already working on it, Admiral. The network spans multiple galaxies now. If anyone has information, we'll find it. Crystal Song of Hope offered the resources of her people. The HFY will prepare freedom crystals for deployment. If this is another collective consciousness threat, we should be ready. As the meeting broke up, Admiral Hayes walked back to his window overlooking the busy space station. Ships from dozens of species were preparing for missions across the galaxy. Some were going to liberate oppressed populations. Others were delivering supplies to newly free worlds. A few were exploring distant galaxies to establish contact with species that had never heard of the liberation movement. Lieutenant Johnson joined him at the window. It's amazing how much has changed since Lisa Carter first picked up that distress call. Hayes nodded. Have you heard from Lisa recently? She's doing well. The Galactic Emergency Response Network she runs has prevented 12 humanitarian crises this year. She says knowing that no cry for help goes unanswered anymore makes all the difference. A new message arrived from the communications center. It was from Lisa Carter herself, now director of the Emergency Response Network. Admiral Hayes, I'm picking up multiple distress calls from the Sculptor Galaxy. Whatever's happening out there, it's big. The Melody aren't the only ones asking for help. Hayes made his decision quickly. Prepare the Liberation Fleet. We're going to the Sculptor Galaxy. Sir, that's over 200 million light-years away. Even with our improved quantum drives, it will take months to get there. Then we'd better leave soon. Somewhere out there, people are crying out for help. And as long as there are humans in this universe, those cries won't go unanswered. As the Liberation Fleet prepared for another impossible journey to help strangers in a distant galaxy, Admiral Hayes reflected on how much had changed. They were no longer just humans responding to a crisis. They had become the spark that ignited freedom across the universe. The galaxy had learned that sometimes the most powerful force in existence wasn't advanced technology or superior weapons. Sometimes it was just the simple human refusal to let suffering go unanswered, no matter how impossible the odds seemed.